The literary world was beside itself in 1925, anxiously awaiting the publication of F. Scott Fitzgerald's latest novel, The Great Gatsby. Well, just 25,000 copies of Fitzgerald's slim novel were sold from the first printing, and if you happen to have one of those, do hold on to it. Sales were so disappointing originally, in fact, that there was some surprise that in 1927, Paramount adapted the novel for the screen. Unfortunately, the film seems to be lost forever. It was made on nitrate stock, which, like 80% of films made before 1950, disintegrated in the can. There remains, however, a 1-minute trailer. Here are Gatsby and Daisy getting reacquainted in a sexy scene, and a couple of scenes from Gatsby's lavish Long Island parties, including gangs of women for some reason running up and down the floating staircase, and also, for some reason, synchronized swimming. It wasn't until some 20 years later, after critics and readers alike began reassessing The Great Gatsby, Paramount took another stab at making a movie of the book. Today, nearly no one has ever seen the 1949 version of The Great Gatsby. It wasn't a hit, despite starring one of Hollywood's biggest stars in the title role, Alan Ladd. You'll remember that in most tellings of the story, Gatsby's true profession is teased, but left largely to speculation. In the 1949 movie, Alan Ladd's Gatsby is a straight-up gangster. In the first 10 minutes, he kills 2 guys. And at one point, in one of his parties, he sucker punches the guy who talks to him the wrong way. At the insistence of a Hollywood censor, the film begins years after Gatsby's death, with Nick visiting Gatsby's grave. Standing by a modest headstone, Nick solemnly recites the scripture referenced on the grave. "There is a way in which seemeth right unto a man,
but the end thereof are the ways of death."
In other words, the censor is scolding us, don't be fooled by all the fun these people are having. They're all in hell now. Like certain kinds of locusts, screen adaptations of The Great Gatsby seem to return every 20 years or so. In the early 1970s, producer Robert Evans' wife, actress Ali MacGraw, who she'd just broken through in Love Story, decided she wanted to play Daisy. Evans, the good husband, paid F. Scott Fitzgerald's daughter $350,000 for the screen rights to Gatsby. As for MacGraw, she and Evans broke up before filming started, and she declared she'd only make the movie if Gatsby were played by her new boyfriend, Steve McQueen. And so Ali MacGraw, who'd gotten the whole Gatsby remake ball rolling in the first place, was out because the part had already been promised to Robert Redford. Now Evans needed a Daisy. He considered Candice Bergen and Catherine Ross. Faye Dunaway actually did a screen test. But then there was Mia Farrow, a woman who seemed destined by fate to play Gatsby's lover, for reasons that stretched back nearly 50 years. You see, it was Farrow's godfather, George Cukor, who directed the first stage production of Gatsby, and her father was the original director of the 1949 remake. Most importantly, though, of all the actresses vying for the role, Farrow was the one with the most delicate looks, the most vulnerable demeanor. When the film was finally released, there was praise for the photography, the set and costume design, and critics split over the almost slavish faithfulness to Fitzgerald's prose. There were lots of complaints about the chemistry between the two stars. Most critics liked Farrow's performance, but Redford seemed distracted. He later confessed that he was obsessed at the time with the unfolding Watergate scandal. Every moment he got, he was back in his trailer or his room, watching the hearings, reading everything he could on it. Of course, years later, he turned that obsession into All the President's Men. 2 footnotes regarding the 1974 Gatsby. Howard Da Silva, who was so memorable as Mr. Wilson in the 1949 version, returns here as Meyer Wolfsheim, Gatsby's shady business partner.
What'll I do when you are far away and I am blue? What'll I do?
And remember that haunting version of What'll I Do that opened the film? It's my favorite recording of the song. I have it on a playlist. It was performed by this man. No, not Bill Murray, the other guy, Bill Atherton, who went on to play Walter Peck, the fastidious EPA official in the Ghostbuster movies. And this is why, dear reader, you stick around for the closing credits of every movie. We won't dwell too much on the 2000 screen version of The Great Gatsby, which starred British actor Toby Stephens as Gatsby and as Daisy Mira Sorvino. It was a quickie cable TV movie filmed on a shoestring in Montreal for the A&E channel. Stephens is a pretty stiff Gatsby, and Sorvino is too much of a shrinking violet to be involving. But there was one standout performance in the film, Paul Rudd as Nick Carraway. Of all the on-screen Nicks, Rudd's is the only one that seems to have walked off the pages of Fitzgerald's novel. He's a candid observer throughout, wide-eyed at the spectacle of Gatsby's lifestyle, yet always keeping himself at a distance from the empty frivolity of those around him.
Gatsby.
The Gatsby most familiar to moviegoers today is, of course, the 2013 version, starring Leonardo DiCaprio as Gatsby, Carey Mulligan as Daisy. Most of all, though, the film is directed by Baz Luhrmann, whose pounding, feverish, over-the-top first half hour threatens to turn Fitzgerald's short novel into a Bollywood musical. Gatsby quiets down considerably for the second half, and it's here that we discover that after all those false starts that preceded him in other versions of the book, DiCaprio's is by far the most nuanced Gatsby of them all. His Gatsby wears his haughty self-confidence and quivering insecurity in equal measure. The previous actors who played Gatsby, stiff Midwesterner Alan Ladd, stoic Robert Redford, all seemed almost as conscious of their established screen personas as they were of bringing Gatsby to life. DiCaprio lets the character take him wherever he wants to go, from puppy dog neediness to, in a truly terrifying scene at the Plaza Hotel, an unbridled rage that led me to believe that, in this version of the story, Gatsby might really kill a man. I suppose everyone who makes a movie of The Great Gatsby figures theirs will be the definitive one. But there remains a stubborn, timeless resonance to Gatsby, be it the themes of ambition, the authenticity of the American dream, the persistence of class and society, and the lure and the appeal of the city itself. I'm reminded of the day in January 2013 when I interviewed former New York Mayor Ed Koch at his Greenwich Village apartment. He was, of course, happy to talk about himself, what politician is not, but mostly he wanted to talk about the unique, flawed, and fabulous universe that is New York City. I think F. Scott Fitzgerald put it best, he told me. And then he said, wait, I keep the quote right here in my wallet.
Yeah, here it is. The city seen from the Queensboro Bridge is always the city seen for the first time in its first wild promise of all the mystery and the beauty in the world.
You really love that city, don't you?
I certainly do.
I can truly say that Ed Koch's love affair with New York endured for his entire life. 2 days after we spoke, he was hospitalized. 9 days after that, he died. A few months later, the Queensboro Bridge was renamed the Edward Koch Bridge. F. Scott Fitzgerald knew a good ending when he wrote one, and that is one, I think, he would have kept.